Are you ready for a deep dive into the tech and digital trends shaping our industry? We have invited to discuss the travel sector shifts in the age of the much discussed topic artificial intelligence, the partner at McKinsey & Company, Nina Lind. Welcome on stage. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Berlin. Thank you for joining us at the e-travel stage. My name is Nina Lind. I'm a partner with McKinsey & Company, and I run our travel sector in Europe. That also includes all our work in digital and analytics in the travel space. And I'm sure you can imagine we've talked a lot about AI and especially GenAI in the last few years and months. We're now about 1 year after the start of GenAI and ChatGPT at a larger scale. We are thankfully after a few years after the pandemic, so we thought it's a great time to take stock and open this day with a short overview, what we're seeing across the travel sector, consumers, the labor environment, and then also what we see in technology adoption and how different travel organizations are embracing artificial intelligence. So let me start with the consumer side. So I think great news for the travel sector. I've been watching the news the last few days. This morning in my hotel room, the news were reporting how confident consumers are about traveling and about spending on travel. I mean, you all know travel has always been the #1 aspirational spending category for consumers for decades. That trend has accelerated in the last few years because consumers want to spend on things that they can experience and see and go do instead of, things they buy and put on shelves and eventually land in the trash bin. So we've run consumer research in the last few months and asked consumers how confident they are about spending and what areas they want to spend on. About 47% of consumers here in Germany have stated that they're looking to splurge, and travel has been the #1 category that people want to spend on, especially this year. In a lot of the other European markets, it looks very similar. We have also 47% of consumers that are really looking to spend in France, in the UK, Spain, Italy. The order of priority is always slightly different, but travel ranks among the top 3 areas of spending in a few markets like France and Italy. Things like restaurants, apparel take slightly higher priority, I guess. I don't want to serve the stereotypes too much, but you see, it's a very important spending category across almost all of the major travel markets. I also want to briefly talk about digital adoption. This is not news to you at all, but just, a couple of comments, what's been happening, what's been driving these numbers. We're seeing digital adoption of consumer interactions have increased from 49% before the pandemic to 58% now. This doesn't only include shopping. This also includes customer interactions with your service centers, with the front line, any point along the travel journey. And of course, this is not a surprise after the pandemic where we all spend time at our homes, got used to buying things online. Everyone has credit cards by now. But there's also another important factor that has driven this development. A lot of travel companies have nudged consumers to, for example, make changes to their bookings, refunds during the pandemic online. And we saw a lot of consumers and travelers have experimented with these digital channels instead of sort of waiting in the call center for hours, and they're not coming back. So they enjoy the interaction on the digital channels and they stick to them. So this is a very sustainable trend across all interactions, and as you can see, we expect that to continue to grow over time. I also want to talk briefly about the labor environment and the job market in general. We've all seen it's been difficult the last few years to ensure that we have sufficient workforce employees to basically run the at-scale operations after the pandemic again. Just one example from the average hourly earnings for workers in the hospitality sector in the US. You might be wondering, why do we see a little spike there on the left-hand side? That was at the beginning of the pandemic, when we had a substantial loss of low-paid workers in the hospitality sector, when many businesses shut down. And so that bumped up average earnings because these jobs were essentially leaving the market. You see roughly 33% in terms of earnings since the pandemic. That is a sign of, the difficulties in the labor market to ensure we have sufficient staff. And that is combined with a general consumer trend. Our customers, travelers, are expecting more personalization, more personalized service across the journey. In our research, about 71% of consumers said that they were expecting a more personalized service across their journey, and even 76% of consumers mentioned that they get annoyed in case that is not delivered to them, so they don't get a very good personalized experience. So in that context, that backdrop, more travel activity, a lot of challenges with scaling operations back up after the pandemic, a challenging labor environment has led a lot of travel companies to really embrace technology and also AI, artificial intelligence, and GenAI in general. So I want to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing in the travel sector, but I think important to retain that backdrop. So just to give you a few of the facts on what we see in terms of technology and especially AI adoption. So when we asked executives in the industry, about 86% of executives, that's almost everyone, mentioned that artificial intelligence and machine learning are priorities that they want to invest in the next couple of years and are looking to embrace. The other interesting factoid on the top right-hand side, we have more than 211 startups in the last 10 years that are specifically focusing on AI and analytics in the travel sector. And I think if we made daily updates to this number, we would probably now see this increasing by the day. And I'm sure many of them are also here outside the stage. And if you look at investments, about $4.6 billion have been invested in artificial intelligence and the underlying infrastructure, services, capabilities in the travel sector only. So it's a high priority, and we expect that to go to essentially only increase from here. I would also like to put this briefly into perspective, comparing to other industries. So we did some research looking at the potential impact and opportunity from artificial intelligence across a number of industries. The travel sector is estimated, of course, it's a wide range, but somewhere between 180 and $300 billion in terms of productivity gains and impact. Yes, that's a very big number, but I think what's even more interesting is that the travel sector actually ranks up very high on this list with high-tech, retail, and banking. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One, it's a sector that is on the verge of really breaking through artificial intelligence and technology adoption in general. So a lot of the impact is yet to come. And a lot of the scaling that we are expecting across industries is still to happen. I think the other reason is a lot of the typical use cases that are, very well geared for AI applications are very, very relevant in the travel sector. If you think about customer service, call center applications, bot applications have gone relatively far, and GenAI was essentially the last piece that was still missing to make human interaction effective, relevant, less clumsy, and really make sure it solves people's problem when they get to, for example, the call center. I think the other important reason to keep in mind, the travel industries are typically quite global, very frontline, human interaction focused, and there's a lot of data that's generated across the entire travel journey. But it sits in very dispersed, decentral, fragmented data systems, places, touch points. So bringing that all together and making sure insights can be captured across the entire travel journey has been really, really difficult. And so artificial intelligence and GenAI in general make the aggregation of data sets, the extraction of insights a lot easier. And so we're really reaching a sort of tipping point for breakthrough of GenAI and AI adoption in general in the travel sector. Just a quick summary, in what areas are we seeing a lot of the applications in AI and GenAI? So let's start with the customers, of course. A lot of the initial use cases are based on knowing your customers better. Drilling down to a segment of one is something where we said a few years ago, hey, this is really, really difficult. I'm not sure you need to know that I am Nina and I'm traveling from Berlin to Munich. It is probably enough to know that I'm traveling alone on business days or in other instances where I'm traveling with a family, with children to a sunny destination. That's already a lot of information that allows travel companies to tailor offerings and, make any interaction more relevant. Now, in the context of AI and GenAI, drilling down to the segment of one and really understanding who I am, what I'm looking for, and interpreting the context, that's the new development that GenAI is bringing. The second part, quite important, is the product design, the delivery, the offer creation. I think a lot of different terms to say what kind of service and offer do we want to make to our customers. And that includes not only identifying what relevance means and what I'm looking for, but also actually producing it. And we know across, the travel booking journey, most consumers have about 140, 150 touch points. So there are a lot of interactions. There's a lot of searching, researching going on, and responding to the search behavior, the questions that people have in this journey typically requires a really high touch interaction, and a lot of information has to be provided. And with the GenAI applications, it's becoming much easier to sort through information, understand what's relevant, produce new information, produce new materials that are otherwise really labor intensive and time consuming to make. And it simply allows, for example, agents or any intermediaries in the process to focus their time on what really matters in the customer interaction and spend less time on research and sorting through in a very scalable way that's almost not possible to do as a human being. And then last but not least, the workforce enablement. This is a topic that we see a lot. I mean, with the backdrop of labor shortages and increasing difficulties to hire and retain talent, we see a lot of use cases and applications where especially frontline workers are trained in a much more efficient way, less of a one-to-one coaching relationship, but actually using GenAI applications or AI applications to test, whether they fully understand how to use the systems, the service protocols, and you see AI or GenAI react in a way that's really allowing them to understand different customer types, different preferences for tone, for the level of information, and is basically responding to that. So there's a lot of experiments at the moment, but this is an area that we, see a lot of opportunities in for the travel sector to break through the challenges with the labor market and the talent environment. So as I said at the beginning, I also want to spend a bit of time on just like the use cases and applications that we see out there. A lot of initial applications have started with making the whole search and booking journey more flexible, more modular, and really make sure it responds to what somebody is looking for. So if we start with a typical request, hey, I'm looking for a flight on these dates to this destination, GenAI is able to basically interact in a natural language way with a consumer and essentially decide how to display the information back to the consumer. For some, it might be more efficient to see a very simple list with prices, itineraries. For some, it's pictures associated with, for example, the cabin or the seat that you're booking with a respective airline or the destination. It's essentially a application that sits on top of the usual user interface and can decide in that moment how to feed that information back to the consumer. And it's also learning from these interactions, and it's understanding the context that the customer is coming from. So from static text, images, VR, videos, there are different formats, and there's essentially no limit to the creativity of the applications here. Then you also have the communication with the travelers along the way in the booking funnel. A lot of travelers are looking to book add-ons, experiences, tours, and activities. But it's often done in a very mechanical step at the end of the journey. Hey, is there also something else that you want to add to your trip? And GenAI applications allow to make this a lot more conversational and adjust to the preferences of the traveler. Here, for example, we have someone that has a lot of points to spend with a respective airline. And so the GenAI application is making a suggestion for where to spend these points. There's, of course, also a decision on, at what ratio you want to redeem the points, on what kind of offering. And then the application is able to sort of test what has the highest conversion, what creates most engagement, what is a reasonable price point for the points to burn on this activity. And so this is a lot of information for that respective airline that was usually or has historically been a lot more difficult to obtain and done in thousands and thousands of A/B tests, is now done in the matter of a couple of seconds, essentially. It also helps travel companies establish a lot more relevance and more credibility and a better relationship with those customers, because messages are typically less obtrusive. They are more on point, on target. There's also a decision on tone and vibe that is communicated across these messages. If you see the little blurb here on the right-hand side, this person totally understands that somebody's looking for outdoor activity, and is also basically providing additional resources to compare the information provided back. And then last but not least, it also allows to aggregate additional data into the decision-making process and continuously training the underlying models. And of course, in the context of the airline here, you see it on the left-hand side, they already know a lot about this travelers, the flight history, where this person is booking, what kind of flights this person is usually booking, food preferences, seating preferences, but it's all very specific to that one touch point. But if you think about the additional information that can be obtained from the loyalty program, the credit card spending of this person, and also just the additional, search preferences, allows to understand a lot more of the context and allows to continuously train these models and make the experience for the traveler better and more relevant. So just to recap what we're looking at. So in terms of the most important GenAI applications or AI applications that can make a real difference for travel companies, you've got the insights extraction, so being able to rapidly mine different data sets to make faster and better decisions. You've got the content generation to create the offers, the messages, the bundles, the interaction with the consumers. And then you have the actual user interaction and the ability to create a human-like dialogue, conversation, depending on who you've got on the other side of the table. There are a number of different use cases across the entire travel ribbon. You see the typical, flow from, inspiration, dreaming, towards, your post-trip experiences. We currently see a lot of applications in the customer service and assistance side, because it's been building on how far we have gotten with chatbots before the GenAI breakthrough. But there are also a number of different examples. I already talked a little bit about personalized trip planning and inspiration. You have assistant services along the way, digital experiences and marketing use cases that make marketing communication investments, production more effective, more scalable. Pricing applications, a lot of travel companies make millions of pricing decisions any day. A lot of them have AI-powered models that make a lot of decisions very quickly and allow to sort of turn the dials and make sure that the commercial strategies are reflected. So there's a lot of data that has always been used in pricing decisions. Again, GenAI makes this a lot more scalable. And then you also have the onboarding, training, and capability components for the workforce, for the employees, as well as really scanning through reviews, complaints that are coming in to make sure we really understand what we need to improve in our experience, what to work on, and what are themes and patterns that are consistent, so really sorting through the noise. Last but not least, how to get started. This is, of course, the million or billion-dollar question in this case. With GenAI and AI in general, we find it very important, to really lay out a journey. Start with your vision, what domains you see GenAI or AI impact, and start developing against that. In the GenAI context, we see the first proof of concepts work well. But what is really hard is the scaling of GenAI and basically developing the capabilities and the talent at scale, and embracing and getting the organization ready for experimenting with AI. So a lot of the topics around data governance, risk management have come back in the context of GenAI, and that are all pointing towards a very holistic approach to AI that is quickly moving beyond the first proof of concept and developing a stance on the topic of AI and GenAI. And with that, I do hope that this has been a productive start to your day. I know there are a lot of wonderful speakers coming afterwards. It will be an exciting day. I look forward to connecting with many of you during the day. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Partner at McKinsey & Company, Nina Lind. Nina, thank you so much. That was the perfect start.